Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Downey and today we're going to be discussing MENT-only cycles. So I've been doing a bit of research on MENT past few days, and I'd just like to share with you the research I've come across in case you're unfamiliar with the drug that is MENT or Trestolone. So I will do another video in which I discuss MENT as TRT, but in this we're going to discuss it at supraphysiological doses, what you can expect and what you need to take care of. Obviously it would be best if you stayed away from it, but this is what you could expect based off of research. So you may ask yourself, why would someone want to run one compound only? And usually there are a variety of different issues. It's just that each compound comes with its own problem and you don't want to stack these problems up, although stacking could theoretically reduce the amount of side effects you experience. But at the same time, someone might not like using testosterone as a base because it doesn't agree with them or for their own reasons, which is fine. The reason that MENT is considered or it could possibly be used as a standalone treatment or a cycle, is that whilst it is highly suppressive, it still mimics testosterone's actions by maintaining sexual behavior, libido, mood, and muscle mass, and it also does convert to estrogen, meaning you still have the IGF-1, and you won't suffer the low estrogenic side effects. So that means it essentially mimics testosterone without actually being testosterone. So whilst you will be suppressed and your blood work will show you have low levels of testosterone, Trestolone will be replacing those functions essentially. So it is considered a SARM also, but I wouldn't call any SARM that we call SARMs a SARM. It's because SARM is meant to be a receptor modulator and none of them seem to modulate the receptor. They do show some selectivity at low doses, but a few compounds that aren't considered SARMs share the same characteristic, and it's the same with MENT. At low enough doses it is very selective, which is why it's also they want to use it to replace testosterone, but at a high dose it isn't selective at all. So it's partially agonistic at the receptor. So since it's considered a SARM, it is legal to purchase in some countries. But we're just going to look at supraphysiological doses in this video. So let's just go over what Trestolone is. So it's a 19-nortestosterone, that means it fits into the group of tren and deca. However, it's a bit different. Whilst tren and deca do have some research suggesting they convert into estrogen, Trestolone quite potent, or at an equal ratio to testosterone, converts into estrogen into 7-alpha methyl estrogen, which is a bit different to normal estrogen or estradiol, but it's the same estrogen that D-bol is converted into. So that's why some people compare it to the injectable, say it's injectable D-bol. So for a cycle, it typically runs from anywhere from 5 milligrams all the way up to 100 milligrams a day. So this is daily, this is not weekly. A few have tried 100 milligrams a day, but for a typical blast, I think most people use between 25 and 35 milligrams a day. And most sources you will get Trestolone from will be an acetate. I don't think many sources supply enanthate or decanoate, which means that it can be used quite effectively for a cycle of 8 weeks, but it could be used longer. And if you get the enanthate or decanoate ester, it means it would have to be run a bit longer in order to saturate the receptors, so that would mean it would have to be run between 12 and 20 weeks. Remember, an acetate ester means it requires daily injections. The half-life is very short with the acetate ester, as you'll come to see now. So the best thing to do with Trestolone is a lot of people react differently to it. It can be potent for some and not for others, but it's best to start with a low dose because it's quite short. If it's the acetate ester, and you can kind of gauge how you're responding to it. And then you can titrate up or down based off of that. Remember, if you're feeling something, that means it's probably a side effect, but it might not be. But most of the time it's a side effect, and it might mean it's too high, but if you're blasting it, I suppose that's what you want. But so let's look at the pharmacokinetics. So its half-life when injected IV is like 40 minutes, but obviously no one's going to really do IV Trestolone. So into the muscle, intramuscularly, it's 223 minutes. That's the half-life. So it's a bit difficult. Whilst people suggest daily dosing, optimally it would require more than daily dosing. But that becomes a bit laborious. It tends to peak in an hour, so a lot of individuals use it pre-workout because it would be quite a strong pre-workout since it will peak during your workout, and you may get more benefit from that. So it completely clears your system. They were unable to detect it in studies at 24 hours. So that's how long it takes to clear the system. In terms of metabolites, which are commonly used to test in drug testing, I don't know what metabolites they test and how long those stick around, but this is just the drug itself clears in 24 hours, which is important because that would mean your PCT could start after that. So it's not bound to SHBG, which means all of the Trestolone you inject is active and will work, but at the same time it has the negative of it not being bound, so it's as soon as it's in the system, it's cleared out by the kidneys. So it's good and bad at the same time. And it also appears to decrease SHBG, which would make a good addition for stacking with other compounds, because if you lower SHBG, the compounds are more free and can be used a bit more, or will be more active. But at the same time, if your SHBG is too low, you're just clearing the drugs out of your system, so you want it to be at a good range. Importantly to note, it is very suppressive, much more than testosterone is. I saw one study where it's 30 times as suppressive as testosterone at an equivalent dose, but some report 12 times as suppressive. This is to your natural testosterone. And complete suppression tends to occur around 5 to 8 days and is dose dependent. Also, the higher dose you use, the more suppression you will experience. Around 4 milligrams a day resulted in a 76% suppression. So if you're using 25 milligrams, that's like 6 times that dose, and you will experience a lot of suppression. That's why it's also been looked at for contraceptive purposes. However, it has the positive of allowing your pituitary to testicular axis to recover much faster than that of testosterone. So your PCT can start sooner, and it also, on removing the drug, it does seem to the HPTA does seem to recover much faster. Another positive is it's not reduced by 5-alpha reductase, meaning it doesn't convert into DHT, so androgenic side effects theoretically shouldn't be a problem. However, you'll see in the studies they are still a problem. And at the equivalent dose of testosterone, where Trestolone is the same dose as testosterone, Trestolone is 5 times more potent on stimulating hypertrophy of the prostate than is testosterone at an equivalent dose, but it's 10 times more anabolic. That's needed to be noted, because if you were to use it as a TRT dose, it would essentially not be as harmful to the prostate. So if you do have prostate issues, I would not recommend this drug. Even though some say it's selective, it still stimulates the prostate through not DHT, because it isn't reduced to DHT at all, and this is proved in blood assays showing at variety of doses DHT doesn't change, so it must be through another mechanism. So let's go over the health side effects or health effects because these are important. So one of the big claims I see around it is it not being erythropoietic, meaning it doesn't change your hemoglobin or hematocrit more importantly. But that was all it showed was it maintained the individual's original level at a dose of 800 micrograms. That's 0.8 milligrams a day. And we don't know, as we've seen, it loses selectivity quite early on, around 1 milligram a day. It loses selectivity, so it might skew that, we don't know. Again, this is cycle doses, not TRT. It doesn't seem to be protective of the bone, so that's why I would consider it not to be very, SARM particularly, but perhaps it is in that it inhibits the receptors at the bone, but I don't know. And in studies, so in the study with 8 milligrams a day, the sample size was small, but we'll look at side effects from there. Remember, sample size is small, but it's important to take into consideration that there were a few individuals that had quite big increases in cholesterol, and especially LDL cholesterol, and it was noted at any dose from 2 milligrams to 8 milligrams a day. Another important finding was AST and ALT levels did change in individuals, and this was more common, and lactate dehydrogenase, which isn't very specific to the liver, but it just indicates that there's damage at a cellular level, and some do use it as a marker of liver damage, and that was raised quite a few times, sometimes almost above 5 times the normal value. So it is potentially hepatotoxic. Again, sample size was small, but it's important to take that into account. PSA, so prostate-specific antigen, actually decreased, but it's not a great marker of prostate hypertrophy because whilst it did decrease, the prostate increased in size, so it's not a great marker at all. So other problems people have mentioned on forums now is the increase in estrogen and getting estrogenic side effects like gynecomastia, bloating, high blood pressure. This is important. You don't want your heart rate or blood pressure to be elevated whilst on cycle because that can exacerbate problems with the heart and kidneys. So it's important that that be checked throughout the cycle and treated accordingly by either reducing the dose, stopping it entirely is best, or addition of medication. And from subjective standpoints in the studies, 7 people, so it's a small sample size, but 7 people noted androgenic side effects at a dose more than 2 milligrams or 1 milligram a day. So this is interesting considering it doesn't convert to DHT. Again, it must be through a different pathway. Others noted that there were mood changes. They didn't mention whether it was positive or negative, but I assume it was negative if they put it in there in the adverse effects. Sweating and insomnia. Those have also been reported on forums. So again, the estrogen is just a big one that people make out to be the biggest problem, which it can be, but it can be corrected by simply lowering your dose or having a SERM or aromazine on hand to control it. So yes, that's important to control estrogen, but you don't want to crash estrogen as that is also quite dangerous. And again, it's highly suppressive, meaning a PCT will probably be required, although a lot of the studies noted recovery quite quickly after stopping the drug. It was in one case where they used it in monkeys. They for 18 months it took a while, a bit longer to recover, but they did recover eventually. So it may be of benefit to use a PCT, and that can be started after 24 hours from the last dosage, since all of the drug will be cleared. So what are my closing thoughts? So MENT only cycle is definitely possible. Obviously I don't suggest it. I never suggest any of these. But whilst the reason MENT cycle possible is possible because it is highly suppressive, but it does seem to maintain sexual behavior and function, and it does convert to estrogen, meaning you won't necessarily experience any side effects. So it is completely possible to run. But remember, whilst you doing it at cycle doses, it loses selectivity early on, like around 1 milligram a day. So using 25 or 35 milligram, you can't expect to experience much selectiveness. It's not going to be selective, and you will run into those problems like prostate issues, androgenic side effects as mentioned, possible skewing of hematological markers, but we don't know because there haven't been many studies in high dosages. There's a possibility of high estrogen effects, but you can easily control that. Your cholesterol must be taken care of, and that's either through diet, exercise, pharmacological intervention later on if it's really a problem. And there could be liver issues, so it's important to take extra precaution and not overburden your liver. But this could be a transient effect. We don't know because the duration of the study was not that long. But a lot of injectable steroids do have this transient elevation in liver enzymes. Just remember the androgenic side effects if you're female. This might not be good if you... it could be good at a low enough dose, but at cycle doses, maybe not. And remember to always monitor your blood pressure and heart rate. You might experience insomnia or sweating. I have seen that reported. And in terms of size gain, everyone wants to know how anabolic it is. There isn't much research on that. And I can't say. A lot of people do compare it to DEBOL, meaning it would create quite a lot of strength and stuff, but lean muscle tissue, you don't know. It could just be water weight, but we are not sure. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, leave a thumbs up or comment, and I'll see you in the next video.